The aftermath of the ostrich slaughter at the hands of the CFIA, the Canadian Food and Inspection Agency, and a couple of other things brought me to think about worldview again. Here we go. And in this case, to contrast what happens on a farm with what happens if you're an urban dweller, you've stuck in a lab, being a virologist, for example, who weighed in heavily on whether these birds, ostriches, which are not chickens, note, the difference in relationships. So one of the arguments that was used consistently was by people that wanted the ostriches killed, was that they couldn't be tested. Well, that would be ignoring the relationship that the owners had with these ostriches and how much trust there is between those who you raise and feed and hand rear and know, and those you don't. So I, for example, on this farm, and there are 2 stallions that were born on this property, and their owner, raised them, knows them. There's also a pony raised on this property. And so that owner can do a whole lot of things with those horses, particularly the stallions, that I, as a newcomer, can't do until we've reached some level of trust. They get to know you, so they know, like, and trust you, which is not a whole lot different from what we would see in business, where in order to do business with somebody, we need to know, like, and trust you. And so those birds could have been easily tested by the owners, but certainly not by a foreign vet, not by somebody coming in and forcing the birds into, trying to coerce the birds into submission, and so that they could take blood from them and test them. That's just not on. That's not practical. There's no relationship, there's no trust, there's no reason. So in these worldview of the city, the urban dweller, the people that, like you perhaps, farms are messy. They look messy because they quite often are. Nature's messy, ecosystems are not orderly, they're not turf farms, they are messy. Now, some farms are messier than others for quite a few reasons. Everything from somebody just in pure overwhelm, maybe there's too much or not enough care given to the land. I mean, my own personal belief and philosophy toward the land is that I'm here to serve the land. I'm grateful to be living on land, wherever it is, in a farm or even in a city. But that's not everybody's view. Some people believe the land is there to serve them. And it's a different kind of relationship that surfaces with that philosophy. So back to worldview then, when a city dweller comes on a farm and they see things that are not clean, they're not tidy, they're not trimmed, they're not orderly, you're looking at how ecosystems function. You're looking at how ecosystems work. So the ditch behind me along this fence line is a ditch, and the temptation of an urban dweller would be to come and trim it and make it look all neat, which is exactly what happened here. Anyway, make it look, and that's not going to hold the water down. It's not going to keep the water from rushing down the road and eroding the soil out of the ground and eroding the health of this pasture next to it. So we see a lot of flooding, and quite frequently it's because there hasn't been any care given to drainage patterns, or where water goes, or how to handle water and respect it for what it does. Now, I have to say that in my world travels, I've been to Machu Picchu, as I'm sure many of you watching have, and oh my gosh, the technology, meaning the wisdom involved in actually controlling without taps, without anything other than gravity, angle, and know-how, put into a pretty spectacular drainage system so that the water flows to the right spots at the right speed. And that is a completely different worldview. So right now I'm talking about 3 different versions of how you see things. I'm not quite sure what to call the city one yet, but it's very much based on linear decision making, that's for sure. And a farm, it's got more to do with relationships. In fact, the indigenous worldview is kinship. These animals are kin. As you get to know them, and they trust you, you trust them. Doesn't mean they're not not up to shenanigans, because they definitely are up to shenanigans. They can get themselves into a lot of trouble, and you with that. So there's that. It doesn't mean they're perfect angels, but it does mean that when you trust them and they trust you, there's a cooperative relationship that you come out of it. You don't get that by swooshing in, throwing up fences, putting in foreign people, foreign vets, foreign people that can't tell a chicken from an ostrich. So that's important to know. When we are, as individuals, moving through the world that seems pretty chaotic and confusing and full of fear. I mean, I was seeing exactly the same patterns for the ostrich event as we saw during COVID. Marginalize people, discredit them, make them look really, really bad, and then polarize the issue, and then control the situation and use force. That's no different from what happened during COVID. So I'm really hoping, I would have hoped that we would have learned from that. Doesn't look like we have at this point, but certainly events like this ostrich cull do teach us that we could be more creative, more imaginative, more responsible, more respectful of our food supply, where it comes from. And in the case of the ostriches, who, reminding, are not chickens, I know it's the third time I've said this, but they're not in our food supply. They do, however, have 25 million years of survival strategies that we don't have, and we could have learned from them. So it's kind of interesting. I was watching a lot of the commentary on I guess it was YouTube, because that's where I post. I was watching some of the commentary about, I don't want any vaxxed chickens. I don't want to have any avian flu vax hitting these chickens, which could have come out of the research work being done by the ostriches to save the food supply. But they're perhaps forgetting that the birds are already medicated. They've already been medicated. There's hormonal stuff in there to make them grow faster and fatter and quick and all that in those large commercial barns. So we have a problem as 8-point-something billion people on this planet. And how do we stay fed? But in order to do that, there has to be respect for the farmers, and it's a totally different worldview. So if you march in with the view that, it's messy and therefore and people made a mistake, or they should have thought this, or the hindsight's 100%, and so if only they'd done this, all that judgment is quite irrelevant when it comes to doing the right thing and sitting down, having conversations, understanding one another, especially when there's different worldviews at play, and then doing out of that, forging a solution that works for everyone, including preserving the food supply. So the way I look at it is there's a question that you tie three things together. How can we prevent the avian flu without killing off our food supply by learning at others? That's the simple question that we can ask ourselves. So I hope that you found that interesting. My name's Donna Jones. Please, if you like this, subscribe. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like it as well and comment. I'd love to see your comments. Thank you.